Hi all, this video is going to focus on the services post type in WordPress. So as you can see, I'm currently in the back end of the intranet right now. You can see down the left hand side we have what we would call post types. So we've got the likes of pages, we have news, we have services. You can see there's other things like alerts and promotions as well. The reason why we split these down is so that it's just easier for you guys to manage in the back end of WordPress. So a lot of people assume that on a website or an intranet, pages are just web pages, which is technically true, but like I say, we like to just split it down for you even further, just so it's easier for you guys to manage, so that you know that if you need to add a service to the intranet, you're going to come into the back end of WordPress and you are going to go into the services post type. So I've just clicked into the services post type, and as you can see, it's brought me a little drop down next to the services post type. So once I've clicked into here, I get to see all the different services that are currently available on the intranet. So I can see all of them. I can see a list called Mine, which is any services that I've created. That would be the same for any individual person who is to create services. So once you've created one, the Mine list will change. Then we have the published amount. So even though there's 601 services currently, there's only 591 that are published, and that is because we have 10 that are in draft. So that means that they're not quite live just yet. We then also have the bin. So this is, if any services have been binned, and also sometimes if you've accidentally binned a page, you would just need to go into the bin and then retrieve it. So alongside this, down the column that you can see down the left-hand side here, we have options such as adding a service, but then we also have different taxonomies, as we call them. So it's very much your filter categories. So when you're in the front end of the intranet, and if I go into services and departments, you'll see that it's what we would consider an archive page. So an archive page doesn't necessarily mean that it's archived content, so it's not things that are hidden away. We just call it an archive template, and it's essentially just where you can, filter things down further. So rather than you having to scroll through the list of the content, you can filter by keyword, alphabetically, department, or location. So that's essentially where you would be able to set these departments and locations. So if I click into like departments, for example, you'll see that currently there's a list of a few different departments there, and I assume that these are going to change over time and there's going to be more added. So it's as simple as just adding the name of the new department in here. You would then click add new department. You can obviously edit and delete departments, if things are going to change over time. Departments may change name, it could be anything like that, they could merge together. So essentially that can all be edited in here. You'll see that the same is applied for the locations as well. So you can see that we've got those locations applied here. Should you need to add a new one, you can do so by clicking into the name. You don't have to add slug or anything like that. It will just do it for you automatically. You can then click add new location. And again, you can delete, edit any of the locations that way. So just going back into the services, if I was to go in and I wanted to add a new service, I would just simply click add service up at the top here, or I can click add service here. So if I go in and add a new service, what I can essentially do is start to add my content. So first of all would be my title. So I could put in here example service. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the kind of content that you can add there. I think it's going to be better if I can't spell at the moment service. if I show you an example of an existing service, just to show you kind of how the editing experience works. So depending on when you come in to create the content, should you have it already written down in another document and you're ready to just pretty much upload it straight in, or you're starting to write things out from scratch, you can do either of those things. So if, for example, I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to pull out a example for catering. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull over the content that we can see here and just add that into my page. So you can see I've just copied and pasted that. So just remember as well, depending on where you're sort of pulling your information over from, you do need to make sure that the formatting and everything like that is okay. So what I mean by that is sometimes if you're pulling something over from a Word document, let's say, and you've added headings, lists, etc. into your Word document, WordPress will do its best to kind of match that, but sometimes it gets it, slightly wrong. So it might be that sometimes a heading's pulled over and it's actually just bold text rather than a heading. So it would be really important to make sure that those are outlined properly. Same with lists as well. It might look like it's in list format, but not necessarily. You'll notice that it might be in a paragraph format. So it's just little things like that that you need to check. So just because you've now got your content doesn't necessarily mean that it's set in stone. You can move things around. You can change things into different blocks if you need to. So as an example, if this was just our content and you're happy with the content that's in there, you can literally just hover over and highlight some bits of text. And what you can do is, if you see here, we have this icon. If I click the icon, I can change that into a list. So I can say now that I'm happy that this bit of information here belongs in a list. And then if I wanted to add a different block to the page that's not a heading, a list, or a quote, essentially what I would need to do is just, again, highlight the text. I've just copied that. And if I backspace and delete it, what I can then do is I can decide based off the list of blocks that we've got here. So I just click the toggle at the top there, and is to just click /. It will give you some examples, and or there is the black toggle button there, and that'll do the same thing. So if, for example, I decided that this should be in a panel block, what I can then do is I can add the block in and then again just paste in my content. I can then add a heading, and you can see now that my content's starting to format in a slightly different way. The other thing you're able to do as well is, just because, again, the way that you might have been given the content to just upload to the website, and or you could have written the content out, and it's not until you've got it in the web page here where you can see it in real time that you might decide that things belong in a different place on the page. So you might have written out your content, and again, we've added this at the bottom, but we might decide that this actually belongs a little bit further up the page. Absolutely fine, because you can click the little arrows here and we can move those around and just format your content slightly differently to how it was initially. So hopefully that makes sense in regards to it being, quite easy to move things around, add things if you want to, everything like that. So again, if I just click enter, I now get this grayed out message say type / to choose a block. So you / and you can see that you can add any different things in here, images, it could be headings, whatever you want it to be can be added on the page. So now we can say that the content on the page has been added and we're happy with it. If I scroll down on the settings that we can see here, so we have different things such as the publish date. So this is really useful for, any circumstance, but things like news articles. It might be that you find yourself with a little bit of time on your hands and you think, right, I know that this news article needs to go on the website, but it doesn't need to be on the intranet for another 2 weeks. You can set a publish date to be something in the future, which means that you can create the page, set the publish date, and then you don't need to worry about it. It's going to publish on that day at that time that you've set prior. You can set a publish date to the past as well. So it could be that you decide, especially with these services, if you're thinking about dates that need reviewing, it could be that this particular service here needs reviewing in a year's time, but it was actually created a year ago, so it's going to be like a 2-year period before the information is reviewed. So you can always set a publish date in the past too, and then that would just give you guys an idea. This particular service was created a year ago, it doesn't need to be reviewed for another year yet. So coming on to review dates, if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see that we can add a review date. So I can click into this box and then I'm presented with this date picker, and I can choose the month, I can choose the year, and I can use the particular day as well. So that would be your publish time. Other things that you might want to use in the summary box is change the URL. So you can see that the permalink is changeable here, and this is just essentially the URL for this particular service. So you can see underneath that there's other bits that go into that first of all. So there'd be the Newcastle Intranet URL alongside the service, and then also you can change the URL to something else, so the permalink as they call it. So it could be that you just decide to change this to example because it makes more sense to do so rather than it being example service. It's entirely up to you. You can then obviously move this service to the bin. If you decide, actually, we don't need this anymore, you can click move to bin, or you've made an error, whatever it might be, and you decide, actually, we don't need this, we can just move it to the bin. You can then obviously see here that we can apply a department if we need to using the departments box. So it might be that you've added the department earlier on in the process. So you've come in and you've done it on the page we were on before. You can then add the department as you come in here, but your other opportunity to add a department is that you don't necessarily have to add the department separate to adding the service. What I mean by that is you can just click add new department and then you can add that department name in there. Once you click add new department, it will add itself to the list here. And then essentially what will happen is going forward, any new services that you create or even editing existing services, that department will be available. So it's going to be available for then every new and existing service that's on the intranet. The same would then apply for the locations too. So if I click into locations again, you see it's given us the same list. I can add a new location if needs be. The next part would be the excerpt. Now, you're going to create your own way of doing things, and it might be that you've got a particular way that you would add your content to the intranet. So it could be that you decide to add the excerpt first, you would then come in and do your content, or like I've just done here, it might be that you add your content first, then you move on to your excerpt. It's however you find is the best for you, really. There's no right or wrong when it comes to adding content. So I'm just going to copy and paste again the catering excerpt. So you can see I've just added that into the excerpt box. And then what I can do is I can either save the draft, come back to it later on because I'm not quite finished or I need somebody else to review it, or I can view the service before I publish it to make sure that it looks okay, it's formatted okay. And you've got a couple of options really. So you can either preview on desktop, tablet or mobile. And what it would do is when you click preview in a new tab, it will show you this page as an example in whichever one's clicked. So if it's mobile, it will obviously be a smaller screen, same with tablet. But this is currently set at desktop. So I'm going to preview in a new tab. What should happen is that you should then be able to see the service item. I know there's a little bit of work going on in the background at the minute, so that's why that's not currently working. But if I go in and click now publish when it lets me, that would then do the same thing. So essentially the preview, it's going to show you an example of what that page looks like on the intranet, so on the front end as we call it, but it's not then viewable for anybody else. So it's literally just you who can see this preview. You can't send somebody this preview link because they won't get it. They won't be faced with the same screen as you. So it's just worth bearing that in mind. So now I'm just going to view my service item. So I'm just going to open that in a new tab. And that's now going to show me this service on the intranet. So you can see we've got the example service. You can see that the excerpt is slightly bigger than the rest of the text. And then we've got our content underneath there. So I'm just going to go back in and I'm going to remove my example service before I forget. So if we move that to the bin, what's going to happen is page binned. Oh, sorry. Skipped a little bit there. So if I go back to the services, just to show you parts of sort of the maintenance of the services area, you'll notice that the other post types are very similar, if not the same, when it comes to this. The only difference would be is that you can see the likes of the departments, locations, clinical boards. Obviously, these particular taxonomies, again, as we call them, may not apply to the likes of pages, etc., because these are just specific to the services. But what you can do is you can see that we can just scroll down and look at any of the services in the services post type. You can see who the author is as well. So thinking about scenarios whereby you might be assigned to check any service that's been created by Support and Mixed, change the author of it. You might need to check the content in there, whatever it might be. So again, you can see the services department, things like that. You can see the date that they've been published as well, alongside any review dates that are set. You can click into the existing service and or click edit. They will take you to the same place. So that's just the page that we're on before when we set up that example service. So by you clicking the title or clicking edit, it's going to take you to the same place. You can quick edit. So if you're wanting to do something quickly, the things that you can do is either change the title or the slug. So it could be that you need to change the title of the service because it doesn't quite match anymore. You can change the slug, although we recommend not changing slugs after the intranet goes live. And it's just so that people aren't faced with 404 messages saying page not found because we've changed the slug. You can change the date, so you can change the date that it was published. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, if this is set to the date that it was actually published on, it could be that you decide actually this service was created back in 2020, so we need to change the date here. You can change the author as well. So if you've been assigned a task to, if somebody leaves the organization, it could be that you are assigned to change the author of a page to yourself. So you can go in, click the list of authors, and essentially you can change that to whoever you need to. Editors, maybe not so much. I believe that's more client admins than it is for editors. You can then change the department or the location. So again, rather than you having to delete your service and then add it again and add the right department, you can just change. You can add more than one as well. So you can see that I've just been able to tick more than one there. So you can do that in the quick edit alongside change the template. You can then also change it to draft if need be. So using the status here, you can change it to draft if need be. You can also change the review date just by clicking in here. And again, you're faced with that date picker again. You can view it, so you don't necessarily have to have the front end open and searching for it. You can just click view and that's going to show you the example of that. Again, you can bin it as well. That was a lot to cram into one video, but hopefully that gives you an understanding of how the services work. If anybody does have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or reach out to somebody in your team who then would be able to guide you further or come back to me. But yeah, I hope that gives you an understanding of the services post type. So yeah, so thank you very much.